Do you get overwhelmed when you have to make financial decisions? Like, does it actually stress you out when you've got financial choices that you have to make, whether it's, to pay off debt, credit cards, or to even get a credit card in the first place, or maybe it's whether or not to invest in that thing or the other thing. So do you find that fear of money holds you back from making those financial decisions, and it actually affects your well-being? Well, I've got just the person for you today who I've met through Instagram. I love the power of social media, a good old stalk, when you find someone, you're like, oh, she's a money honey. I like her. So I've been following this expert who's coming on the show. I've been following her for a while. And we've been trying to sort this podcast out for a while. And she is in financial services. But what I particularly liked, I'm sure she'll tell us about her background and everything. But what I particularly like is that after years of qualifications, research, this person has come to the point where she now understands how our brains behave under stress and how this impacts our financial decision making and our well-being. So we're really going to get into this with the lovely Julie Flynn from Bree Wealth. Julie is going to walk us through how we can help, knowing what our brain is like when we are faced with money and we are faced with the decisions of what to do with money, what we can do about it, how we can build our confidence, how can we lower those stress levels so that we can make better choices. So are you ready for this? Let's bring her in. Here we go. Julie, hello.
Hello there.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me on the Money Honey. I'm quite excited about this.
Thank you for your patience. I'm so happy to have you here. It's so nice. Well, this is the first time we've ever spoken. As with most guests, I tend to just send them a random message on Instagram and they find my crazy kind of crazy and you're crazy. You must be crazy. You're here. We're here. That's, we're making it work.
Mutual craziness. Yep.
Mutual. Yes. Love it. I love the vibe. So Julie, I've given everybody a little teaser about what this show is going to be about. I really can't wait to learn from you myself, actually, because yes, I'm confident in everything, but I'm sure money stresses me out in many, many, many ways. But just give us a quick intro. What do you do? And how can you help today?
Okay, so my background is I am an independent financial advisor, and I started as an advisor back in 1990 something or other, so a little while ago. And what I found is maybe about 10 years ago, I fell out of love with what I do a little bit, because a lot of it is let's move pension A to pension B because it's better. And quite frankly, that's dull as dishwater and it didn't excite me anymore. So I was trying to find a way to make my job more interesting for me, and I realized that is the way we think and feel about money is actually the thing that determines the outcomes that we have. It's not how much money we have, it's how we think and feel. So I just went off on one trying to understand this a little bit more. And it's like, I do a lot of work with women that have lost their partner. So you've got all kinds of things going on there, identity crisis and everything. It's just like, how can we approach this differently so that we get much better outcomes for people? And along the way, I've done lots of different training, but one of them was as a financial coach. And anybody that's done this will tell you that, oh my God, it's kind of worms, because if you want to train to be one, you've got to look at your own stuff first of all. And when I did that, I'm like, oh, my relationship with money is not good. And I trained with loads of other financial advisors, and it was the same for everybody. I thought we're all walking around with these dodgy ideas about money in our head, and they are not serving us. So since then, I've been on a bit of a mission to get people to sort of think and feel differently about money.
Wow. And I know you gave me permission offline to go into the nitty gritty and, heads up everybody. This is going to make you want to reflect on your own habits, on your own money behaviors, your money mindset. But we've got Julie here who has volunteered to put herself in the hot seat and is willing to go there, right? She's willing to be vulnerable. So please be welcoming, please be respectful of what she shares, and just know that that's not an easy task, right? So you're offline, we're online, so please do appreciate where she's coming from. So I'll let Julie go wherever she wants to go with this, but I'll kick things off with the question: what did you find when you looked into your finances?
It wasn't so much starting with the money. That came second. The first thing is when, like, we all have these phrases that we heard about money when we were growing up. Okay, so money doesn't work growing trees. You've got to work hard for money. All those little nuggets that we heard from our parents or our primary caregivers or in our communities. And some of them will have really stuck in our heads. And so I think research shows as well that all our ideas and opinions are formed by the age of 7. So this stuff has been stuck in your head for a very, very long time. So one of the questions that I'll ask clients, and I can ask this with confidence because I've answered it for myself, is, what's the first phrase that comes into your head when you think about money? And if you'd asked me this a good few years ago, my answer would have been, and this is ironic given what I do for a living, is money's not important. That was what came back for me. Money's not important. And on the surface, wait for my explanation, because it's relationships, it's experiences, it's people. These are the things that matter. See, that sounds reasonably healthy and well balanced, doesn't it?
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I get it.
That was my cover story. That was my cover story.
Yes.
That's just what I was telling myself. When I started digging deeper into this idea of money is not important, what I really meant was I'm not important. That's the belief that I was carrying with me.
Okay, so that's a tingly question. That's a tingly answer, because how many of you listening have stopped money flowing into your life because you've actually given it less importance than it deserves? You've said, you've told yourself it's not important. It's not the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of you have a cover story? I love that you said cover story. Like we all have really convincing cover stories. Yeah. I'm gonna try and see if I can find mine on this call. And I'm happy for you to test me, I'm happy for you. I'll be vulnerable. If you want to use me as your guinea pig, I'd love it if you try to find my cover story.
Oh, I don't know, because it could end up in tears.
Really?
Okay,
Okay, well, we'll keep rolling. We'll see where we go.
I'll share mine, and then if you're tempted, if you're brave enough, I'll come back for another episode and we'll do some live coaching.
Yeah, let's do an example, right? Because I've definitely been on a journey with money myself. I actually put a post out today, which I want to see what you think of it, actually. So I put it out on LinkedIn. I know we follow more on Instagram, but I put it out on LinkedIn. That's my main hub for my advisors. And I said, have you ever accepted to work with a client just for the money?
Oh,
you knew the client wasn't right. There was a vibe deep down in your gut that said, I'm not vibing this, but I'll just take it because it's good money. Have you ever been in that situation, Julie?
No, I don't believe I have done. But remember, money's not important with me.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So you see how, so basically I've definitely been guilty of accepting a client, and I've tried to find the good just to justify that I deserve the money. I'm like, right, I don't think this client, it's not my vibe. I really can't, I don't actually want to work with them. And sometimes what I do is I spike the price up so much that I think, well, I'll just make them make the decision. I'll just let them put them in the decision to say no. And they say yes. And you're like, okay, that's actually really good money. So I'm just going to take it. And it's never worked out. It's never worked out. Like, it's either been a burden. I've ended up resenting the project. I'm like, oh my God, they're asking so much,
What story do you think you're telling yourself when you jack the price up?
What story am I telling? I think what that means to me is if they're willing to pay that, then Oh my God, I know what's going to come out my mouth. I feel like I'm saying, if they're willing to pay that, I'm willing to lower my tolerance levels. Like I will bend my values for that. How sad. I don't want to do that. I don't want to bend my values.
So as you hear yourself
So
say that,
I know that's why I'm cringing, because I'm like, because I've done years of personal development, so I know when to catch my limiting beliefs and I know when to catch my thoughts. So I know what I'm saying is like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to bend my values, and there isn't a price for my values.
mm,
There isn't a price, and that's why I put the post up. I said, look, I'm guilty. I have bent my own rules before for the sake of money. Why? I'm not
okay.
like,
So if
yeah.
this situation happened again, so let's say after you and I finish talking today, you get an email from someone and you know of them or you know them, you're like, they're not my cup of tea, right? So what could you be telling yourself instead next time?
Well, to them or to myself?
To yourself, first of all.
Myself. Yeah, I'd probably say, look, Ros, go with your gut. If your no amount of money is going to make you feel happy to work with a client that in principle you're not aligned with, and there's no point taking the money just because of the money, because you're going to be miserable whilst you're in the project.
Right. Anything else?
Well, something else is, if not that, then there'll be another one. There's no scarcity now. I've done the work, right? I believe there's no scarcity for me, and that's why I'm like, why did I accept that client? Like I want to work with people that I'm aligned with, but I'm not living in a scarcity mindset. Maybe sometimes I do slip into a scarcity mindset, and I think, oh yeah, I better say yes to this deal because maybe the summer's been a bit quiet, or it's half term, and I don't know when the next inquiry is going to come in. So maybe, yeah, it does happen. But hence I'm raising it because I caught myself doing that. I was aware of how my mindset towards money had been shifted just by saying yes to a client I didn't actually really want to say yes to. And I caught myself and I was like, no, Ros, that's not you. That's not the best version of yourself that you said you were going to be.
Yeah, because as you're saying, describing that situation, I'm thinking about all the different things that could be going through someone's head that makes them say yes. And this
Okay.
probably says more about me than it does about anybody else. But I thought, what could make me do that? And I'm wondering if for some people it's the affirmation. So, like say if you've jacked your price right up and they're still prepared to pay it. And so maybe internally some people are going to go, oh God, look what I'm worth. Someone thinks I'm worth that. So it's like validation almost as well.
True. Yeah, I could have seen it like that. I could have thought, wow, maybe I charge too less in general. Maybe I should put my prices up. But I also charge what I think is fair. Like obviously what everyone says, charge what you're worth, but also from a business strategy point of view, you've also got to charge what is actually reasonable. I think. Is that a cover story? Is that another cover story? Have I just found out another cover story?
You've just used one of those phrases that's like a big red button for me. All
Yeah,
right.
I've
Just
just
charge
noticed it.
what
I've
you're
just noticed
worth. I'll go off in a soapbox moment about charging what you're worth. I need everybody to stop charging what they're worth. We all need to stop doing this, okay? Because we are all human beings, which means that we are all utterly priceless. So what we
Ooh,
charge for what we do is not connected to us as individuals. So
thank
separate
you.
out the thing that you do and what you charge for it is no reflection on you as an individual whatsoever.
Okay, let's keep going. Like, guys, anyone listening, actually, I've heard this phrase. I use this phrase, like, I'm worth more. I am worthy of this, and I am definitely, this is a fair price, or I undercharge. Like, because we relate, like you say, we relate the numerical, the number to our value as a human. So how would you reframe that to anyone listening? Because I know 100% of the people listening, they must have felt this before. I know this.
Oh, yeah. So I've got a little sideline. Apart from being a financial advisor, I also coach women financial advisors on how to set their fees and how to articulate them. because I don't know about the rest of financial services, but us IFAs, in particular the women, are chronically undercharging. And a lot of this is always coming back to this self-worth thing. So when you're sitting in front of a client or a contractor or whoever, right, we get so invested in, saying what it is we charge. And in that moment when we're putting ourselves out there, regardless, you're going to have this fear of rejection or fear of abandonment going on. So this is at play for lots of us. And then you need to disconnect yourself from the thing that you do. I am not a financial advisor. I do financial advising. I am Julie, right? I am individual. I am perfect. Well, not perfect, but I am priceless, right? I do financial advising, and for that, people give me money to do it. Now, some people, you'll get one financial advisor that's going to charge £5,000, one that charges £1,000. Those people are still individually, priceless. It's not that one person is more valuable, a better person than the one that charges more. Because let's be honest, like we all know people and situations and things where the person flashing the most cash around is sometimes the person you least want to spend time with. Right? So it's disconnecting this idea of that we, what we charge is tied into our value as a person.
Well, that's one major lesson already into the show, just to kick things off with a bang. That is one major lesson that I hadn't framed in that way before. I always thought, oh yeah, I charge what I'm worth. And actually you only ever ended up increasing your prices if you got more confident in yourself. So the higher your self-esteem, the higher you would charge. And so then it starts becoming this ego thing. It's like how good you think of yourself, right? And now I see how misused that phrase was, charge what you're worth. And that's why I said, like, I was kind of alluding to, like, yes, charge what you're worth, but actually the way I set my prices is also based on research, assessment, market rates, market values, delivery, all of that kind of stuff. So I've made my rates not just like, I think I'm amazing and I think you should charge me, you should pay me this. I've made my prices based on my assessment, like my logical assessment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I think there are two aspects to charging for what you do. So the first one is that the market research and understanding, right, what does the market charge and whereabouts in the market do I sit? And then it's right. Well, then, so we've looked outside. Let's look inside now, and that's just inside me. So, what skills, what knowledge, what experience have I brought? Who am I selling to, and what are they prepared to pay for what I've got?
Exactly.
So that's the different aspects. But then you get this whole crazy ego thing that goes on. That once somebody realizes, oh, hey, I can charge 10 grand, and once they've done that for a while, like I can charge 15 grand, but you can, but that doesn't mean you should.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love that you said that. Thank you for making that so transparent, because yeah, I often find that just because something is, oh, that was it. I saw an advert, or it must have been an Instagram reel or something, about the price of water.
Right.
And I don't know if you've seen this, but
No.
in a supermarket, you can get water for as cheap as 50 pence.
Right.
Then you go into a shop and the water is £2. Then you go into a restaurant and the water is £3.50. Then you go to the airport on an aeroplane and it's £6. And then you could be in Ibiza on the beach at a club and the price of water is £25. And actually there are some bottles of water that people have marketed as, £3,000. So they're still selling water, and it might be from one spring or another, but it's still water. The price is determined by how much the customer is willing to pay for it, depending on the demand. Because obviously when you're up in the air on an aeroplane, there is no other water available to you other than what the aeroplane is offering. So is that what you're alluding? Does that kind of visually explain what you were kind of getting to?
And I guess then for anybody that's listening that's trying to figure out their price and what have you as well, then is the difference between, so one of the bottles of water you were describing was a product. Okay, so that's going into the supermarket and I've bought my 50p bottle of water. That's a product, right? The Ibiza bottle of water, that's no longer a product, that's an experience. So
Ah,
it's, figuring
yeah.
out with your offering, your proposition, is it a product you're offering or is it an experience? And once you're in the realms of experience, that's when you probably got a little bit more wiggle room with regards to what you're charging. But, I'm not one for sitting on fences. So I do think some of the things that you see, especially with coaches and what have you, and once people have got that ego thing going on, I do think some of the things that are being charged are just obscene.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just people that have just disappeared up their own backsides far too much.
I totally agree. And that's probably because their money mindset or their affirmation is, I'm worth it. Like, I am
Yeah.
worth this. And
Well,
it's actually turned into ego.
once you say that, though, then you've, to a certain extent, if you haven't done all the other work, you're then constantly chasing. Right. Well, if I'm worth 10 grand, well, then I must be worth 15, but I want to feel better. So now I'm worth 20. And if
Mm,
you're on that journey, then there's something missing at the start that you haven't addressed.
mm, that is interesting. So let's talk about, okay, so we've spoken about affirmations, your cover story, your money mindset. I know that we can't do it justice in half an hour. I appreciate that. But let's just tap into the stress factor. Like, why does money make people stressed?
I think it's a lot of it is cultural and societal. So you'll find that in different parts of the world, people will behave differently and have different approaches and different attitudes. So we're in the UK, and it's still very much something that you don't talk about. And it's that money is so intrinsically linked with status.
Mm,
So if you don't have a lot of money, society generally perceives you as not having a lot of status. And so that we believe to achieve this, then we have to have the money. And if we don't have the money, then there's the fear of being judged. So I think judgment and shame have got such a big part to play because it stops us being able to talk openly and freely about it. And I think that's when the stress comes in. And like one of the things I can remember going back, I was maybe about 9 or 10, and I happened to ask my dad how much money he made. And my mom was like, "You don't ask questions like that." I like,
right.
okay. I never asked anybody else that ever again for about 30 odd years. And I never discussed what I earned with anybody. It was just not a topic that was up for conversation until I started doing this work on myself. And then when I found out that, my little corner of financial services, only 16% of us are women. The rest are all men. And
Mm-hmm.
so what you will see is you will see pay gaps going on all over the show. And so that's what kind of inspired me to get brave and start talking about what I earn. Because I thought we need this transparency because we need women to stop being undersalaried and get them to talk openly about what they're earning so that we can all lift each other up. So it was the drive for equality that made me step out my 30-year little box my mum put me in and let's just start being really open about this.
Yes, I love that because that's the whole reason the Money Honey show was born. Because I was happily getting on with Manuka Media, building digital plans and social media plans for financial advisors for the mission and sole purpose that we don't get taught about money in school. And so we grow up and we become adults, fully functioning adults with money in their pockets that we don't know what to do with, but we pretend we know what we're doing because we're worth it or we're educated or we got a degree. And so we're out there splashing the cash or saving it or not saving it.
Mm.
I don't know, but we've got this monopoly money in our pockets and we're just playing a game. We're all just playing a game. And my mission after being in financial services for nearly a decade, seeing how underrepresented it was by women. When I first joined, I was like, I belong here. Like, that's how I saw it. When I saw the lack of women in the room, I was like, I belong here. I didn't see the men and was like, maybe this is not for me. I actually saw myself as an advocate. I saw myself responsible for making an appearance and for showing up and for representing the underrepresented. So that's how I entered this industry by accident. And I suddenly felt like I fitted in just because there was no one else around me that looked like me. So I felt like I had to, I felt that responsibility and fell in love with it, and here I am 10 years later, having been a broker, master broker and then lender. The mission for Manuka Media was to help financial advisors become educators and influencers. That's what we say, educators and influencers, using the social media platforms as their digital stage, so to speak, right? So you have your podcast, for example, where you educate your audience, and you obviously do one-to-one. And then the Money Honey started because people on social media, financial advisors on social media, mortgage brokers, were saying, hey, there's all the men doing the podcast, there's no women doing podcasts, there's no women doing videos. I'm like, you have to be a woman with a like, you just have to turn the camera on to be a woman who does a podcast. Like, it's not that difficult. As in, the reason there are no women doing podcasts in financial services, or there wasn't at the time, there's loads now, you know, it's really thriving, and we're really starting to elevate and use our voices. But if you want to be, and if you want to see women in finance more, you have to be the woman in finance that does it.
Yeah.
So that's why the Money Honey was born, because I wanted to create this safe space and thought, right, if you're not going to do it, let me just set the stage and come along. And can you believe it, Julie? Even that I've got all the tools set up, it's still hard for people to say yes to the show. I've asked so many people who have said no. They're too scared to come on. I get it, but what then? How can we encourage women to use their voices in financial services, or why are they reluctant to use their voice?
Okay, so this is one I'm lucky that I do know the answer to, because I just know sometimes it feels like I know every female advisor in the UK.
You probably do.
And there is this issue of visibility, and it's underestimating ourselves. I think, you know, as I alluded to, I've been in this for over 20 years. And when I joined the industry, there were no older female role models for me. And now I am that role model that I wish I had 20, 25 years ago. So it's a bit like what you and I are doing. We need to get out there and encourage these women to have a voice. And I think they underestimate themselves, and they're worried that they're going to get challenged, that they're going to say something wrong, that the men will put them down and all this kind of thing. The men aren't listening, and they don't actually care anyway. And that's not who you're talking to, is it? You're talking to other women probably. And I wonder if we're going to get a bit of a sea change happening, because I know quite a few women that are a similar age to me, and, you know, not giving anything away about my age, but I am that perimenopausal group of women, and we're all getting a little bit bullshit, and we've all got to the stage where we don't care quite as much what people think of us anymore, and we're just going to get on and do our thing, and who cares what the men think. So I think it's encouraging women to harness that power when they're at that stage in life. If you're in your 20s and your 30s, you can just point and look at the crazy older ladies and what they're doing. We can do that as well.
Do you know, I've interviewed a few women who are in the exact same mental state as you and same attitude as you. It's like, that's it. I'm hot, bothered, like, stop annoying me. I'm going to tell you exactly how I think, and the meeting's over. You know, it's like suddenly starting to assert themselves, which is great when you have experience and, you know, knowledge and a lot of stories under your belt, which perhaps as a 20-something-year-old, when I first entered the industry, I didn't have. And I was just trying to be that good BDM, and I was just trying to be in my place. And although I could hold my own, I still was playing it safe, because I just didn't want to disrupt or ruffle any feathers. And I felt like the bigger people were the leaders, especially the men, that could make my decision for me. As in, like, if I'd stepped out of line in any way, it'd be like, oh, right, okay, no, that's not quite welcome here. So I definitely held back, but now I'm not holding back. Even though I'm still growing, I'm still learning. Even with the Money Honey, I was actually really self-conscious about launching. Like, imagine, Julie, I don't know how you interpreted it, but I was actually very nearly going to bin the Money Honey name and branding. I wasn't even going to, yeah.
Oh,
don't know. I don't know if many people know that. Yeah. So when I rebranded and we came up with Manuka Media, I was like, I love it. It's just so, like, I love Manuka Media. But then the brand strategist gave me like a personal brand persona that I was looking for, because I said, I don't want to be the queen bee. There's too many queen bees. I don't want to be the queen. I was like, I want to be something else. So we came up with we put the Money Honey together, and I was like, no, because how are the men going to react to me coming out there calling myself honey? Am I sexualizing myself? Are they going to ridicule me for being a bit cute? You know, is this going to come across arrogant? So I had all of these thoughts about myself because of the word, the money honey. And then I had a word with myself and I was like, you're doing exactly what every woman out there needs you to get a grip on. Because if you're going to try and empower women voices and you're not owning your own and you're letting the fear of what men might think or what even women might think. So I thought, oh yeah, the women might think, all right, she's trying to be sexy or something. Like I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. And it was everything but everything that was going on in my head. And so I broke through that. Yeah, I had to just, you guys just see the money honey. You're like, oh, that's a clever name. But actually, everything I thought about it in the background was everything but. I knew it was clever, sassy. I was like, yeah, that's cheeky.
But you had to do a lot of mental gymnastics to be okay with it.
But that is me though, all over. I am a bit crazy. I'm a bit sassy.
That's all of us. And you know what? It makes me think of one of the things we were talking about before we started recording about this. Right. So most people listening are in financial services. Yeah.
Yeah. Property and finance. Yeah.
All right. So we're all in property and finance, and we got our first job whenever, and we went home that day. We're like, oh, I'm a property person. I'm a finance person now. And then we get up the next one and we go to work pretending to be what we think one of them should be. So this is a message for everybody in the 20s and 30s. Okay. So I used to dress like a financial advisor and I used to act like a financial advisor. Okay. I don't do that anymore because I realize a financial advisor is not a thing. It's not a person. It's just a thing you do. And people have this idea of what a financial advisor looks like. And, you know, I disappoint terribly on that front because I'm sitting here in a hoodie and my trainers. But as you're showing up and you're trying to be what you think one of them should be, when what people actually want is they want a real person that's just like them that happens to know all this property and money stuff. You don't have to look and sort of become personified property person. You're still you. You just know about property. And that's why it's okay for people to turn up on social media, turn up on videos just as yourself, as your imperfect, authentic, genuine self who just happens to have a ton of knowledge. That's what people want to see.
That's it. That's literally my coaching program. That's all I want to coach people to do. I actually have on almost every occasion, at least 9 times out of 10 clients, I change their wardrobe entirely, like how they are going to show up. So they show up for their video. And I'm like, where did that suit come from? You always wear a t-shirt when you're on Zoom with me. And why have you hidden all your tattoos? Or why did you shave? Why did you cut your beard off? Like, that's how I know you. Like, honestly, some people have turned up to their recording. I'm like, who are you? Like, I don't recognize you because you've polished yourself up to the point where you think that just because I'm about to record some videos with you, you've had to turn up as this polished financial advisor version of yourself. And that's not what we're about. I've got the best case study of, I'm sure you won't mind me saying his name out loud, but one of my latest customers, George from Real Finance, the irony, real finance, like real people, yet he was suited and booted. And his picture on LinkedIn, I was like, George, I haven't seen you on Zoom. When was this picture taken on LinkedIn? He was like 30 years ago when I first joined the bank. And I was like, why do you look younger now? How is it that you look younger now on Zoom than you do on your LinkedIn profile? So anyway, we went through this whole wardrobe transformation. We got the whole t-shirt look. We recorded some videos, and he's made the biggest impact to his existing audience, who have just turned around and said, they literally said on the comments of his videos, how have you got younger? Just by do you see what I mean? So I totally relate to what you've just said, because the traditional financial advisor who's wearing a suit and holding a Mont Blanc pen is no longer the accessible financial advisor that we want to see today.
No, it's funny because do you know what changed it? Because when I was playing at being a financial advisor and looked like one, there was a ladder lying in the corner of the living room, and I stubbed my toe on it, and I couldn't put heels on, and I had to go out to work. And I'm like, what am I going to wear? So I just put normal clothes on, and turned up at my client meeting and apologized. I'm like, oh God, I feel so much better seeing you like that. It was
Oh, wow.
all the women responded really well to it. They found me a little bit intimidating before, and they liked that I just turned up in my boots and my jeans. It just
Right,
made
so
me
you had
so
to
much
injure
more
yourself.
relatable. Uh-huh.
You had to get to the point of injuring yourself to find. Well, that's why sometimes I do genuinely believe that everything happens for a reason. And yeah, obviously that injury led you to realizing actually your true self was perfect enough. You didn't need to dress it up.
Yeah.
And if you like dressing up, whoever's listening, if you like putting your heels on, I do. I like putting makeup on. I like putting heels on. I like, wearing bright, colourful dresses. But that in itself is not financial services. I'm not
Right.
wearing like a blue suit. So that in itself is already new. So Julie, I could literally keep on going. I'm definitely going to take you up on your offer for coming back on the show at some point to dive further into this, because I'm sure if you are listening to this and I was just about to say, if you've got any questions, please drop them in when this episode comes out on LinkedIn. You can actually comment on Spotify. So you can post comments on Spotify. So if you have questions, I'll check it and I'll make sure I engage Julie if I can't answer the question myself. But this episode will be released on Spotify as you're listening, and YouTube. So you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on LinkedIn. Julie, how else would you like people to connect with you? What's the best way to follow you if they want, more inspiration?
All right. So if you want to connect with me, the best place to come and find me is on LinkedIn. Okay. If you want to see what I'm really like, then that's on Instagram. And that's Julie Flynn, Money Woman. So you will see my cat shenanigans and just my rants to the world. And you'll see everything on Instagram.
Love it. And what about your podcast? Let us share how we can listen to that as well,
All
please.
right. So the podcast is the Women and Money Cafe podcast, and it is on all of your podcasting platforms, wherever you happen to listen to them.
Awesome. So in the show notes, I will include, if you check the notes as you're listening, you can see all of the links that will take you to Julie's work. But thank you again, Julie. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for using your powerful voice to empower the listeners on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks, Julie. Take care.
Okay.